People come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children, generations of every nation, kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth: God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Yeah, swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with His kingdom come.
For the walls to fall, I know a name that will bring them down. I've got a praise waking within my soul. I'm not ashamed to declare it now. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Prepare the way, the King of glory comes. Before his name, every fear must bow. Throw off your chains, Jesus destroys them all. Up from the grave, he is with us now. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. You're the God of the promise. You're good for your word. You're good for your word. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. No word will fail, no weapon formed against your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. No word will fail, no weapon formed against your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. You're the God of the promise.
What's up, Makers Church? Hey, Pastor Shalise here, and I know I'm about to date myself, but does anybody remember the show Cribs on MTV? Yeah, you got to go into celebrities' houses and see how amazing their houses were. So I thought we would do announcements like that today. I wanted to invite you into the amazingness that is my distance learning station for school. Don't even look at that. And definitely don't look at the packages down here that I haven't quite unwrapped. And yesterday I did say that if I did nothing else in the house, I was gonna clean my table. We won't look at that. And oh, here's my dogs that I locked outside because they keep barking at the mail person every time he comes over, and I'm trying to do distance learning, right? But as you can see, nothing in my world right now is organized or clean. In fact, it kind of feels a little chaotic. And maybe you're like me and you're in a season where you're like, man, things have never been crazier. Things have never been more out of sorts. And if that's you, then I've got something to invite you into next week. I need it and you need it. And James Clare, our very own community groups and prayer director, is going to tell us about this amazing event that we're going to be hosting for people just like you and me. So let's check it out.
Hey Makers family, my name is James and I get to lead the prayer ministry here at Makers Church. And I'm thrilled to invite you into an experience that we're going to start on November 8th and go through the whole week until the 14th, called the Week of Prayer and Fasting. Because you see, as much as we try to seek breakthrough in our lives, the great thing is God wants to be invited into the process. And that's what we're going to do that whole week. We're going to be praying for people that we're trying to reach, praying for one another, and praying for the vision God has in store for our community. You're going to see a bunch of details coming out about how to participate in that over the next couple weeks. Now, finally, the best thing is you don't have to just pray 1 week of the year. You can get prayer anytime and anywhere by texting PRAY UP to 97000. Yes, a real person is going to respond to you. They are going to pray for you, and they're going to invite our prayer team into that as well. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you during the week of prayer and fasting.
Hey Makers Church, Mark here. Speaking of our week of fasting and prayer, we have a very special treat the Wednesday of that week, which is November 11th. We'll be hosting a live in-person worship gathering right here in our Makers Church courtyard from 7 to 8 p.m. As you can see, it's got the cool market lights, has sort of that European cafe vibe, which if we're being honest, it's the closest any of us will be getting to Europe for a while. But it's going to be a really special time, and I know I'm excited for it. It's going to be so good for my soul. That said, we absolutely will be following all of the city, county, state health and safety guidelines for COVID, which means we will be practicing social distancing with some other protocols, and that means we have limited capacity for the event. So you definitely will need to register, and you'll want to do that as soon as you can, and you can do that starting today, right now. You can go to makerschurch.org/events, or go to our Church Center app. Either way, you can find more information on the worship gathering, and you can register for a spot there as well. And if you'd rather participate from home, we will be doing some sort of live streaming of the event so you can watch on your devices. So join us, it's going to be great. All right, back to Shalise and back to you there Sunday morning.
So join us next week. Hopefully my house will be clean by then, but you know what? Even if it's not, there are moments that we need to set aside all the busyness, all the activity, and just seek the face of God. And that's what I plan on doing. But you know what? We're gonna have a special moment even today. We don't have to wait till next week. Directly after the gathering today, I'm going to be hosting communion, and we're going to be joining everybody who is gathering for our first live gathering today at Morley Field. We're going to be joining them in a time of communion. So whether you're joining us online or you're live in the park, we're going to be taking communion at the same time together, and we just want to invite you into that with us. So go to your kitchen where I am now, grab something to drink. I've got some coffee. You're gonna need something to eat. I've got some cookies, and we're gonna take communion together and just take a moment to remember God's goodness and His faithfulness. And if you want updates on what's happening with the church in the park, or if you want updates on the week of prayer and fasting, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. If you want to get our text message updates and our emails, just text the word MAKERS to the number 97000. Of course, my dog started barking and we had to cut and take it over, but it doesn't even matter. You know why? Because for the next few minutes, we're gonna block everything out. Pastor Derrick is continuing our Cannot Be Shaken series with a powerful new set of talks. And he's kicking us off today with our first value, which is that we are made to make. Let's check it out.
Hey, good morning, Makers Church, and welcome to our church online experience. If we've never met before, my name's Derrick, and I serve here as a lead pastor, and I'm so glad that you're with us this morning. If you're new with us, you're joining us in the middle of a conversation we've been in for several weeks now called Cannot Be Shaken. And what we've been doing is we've been looking at the core foundational things that should be so firm and secure in us as a church, and we hope in you as a person, that when the storms of life come, when the circumstances of a global pandemic come, that these things would be so true and so core to who we are that they could not be shaken from us. And so we've looked together at our mission statement, the very thing that we have our hearts and minds set on to do together as a church. We looked at our core beliefs, the unshakable truths that we believe deeply. And then today we're starting our values. And so what I want to do today is take a look at our first value that says that we are made to make. We believe that humanity is designed uniquely by God to be generative, that through our gifts and talents that we can build a better future. We have a relentless confidence in the image of God in every human being, that we all have potential, that a part of what we're committed to as a church is nurturing and developing and maximizing your God-given potential and the God-given potential in every human being. And we believe that everything that you're supposed to do in the world, everything that you're supposed to contribute to the world, all of the good that you're supposed to do, all of the potential and talent and giftings that you have as a person, that they should be a gift to the world. But we also believe this, that all of that is fueled by who you are at the core, that your character matters most, that who you are in your soul, that your character is the very material, the very essence from which you will create. And so we believe that we must care for our souls, that our character must be shaped by God. And so we want to create environments and we want to create an appetite in every person who is part of Maker's Church to grow in our character so that what we make with our lives can be productive and constructive. Because the truth of the matter is that we will all make something with our lives. And if we aren't careful, if we aren't intentional, then so many times what we make and what we create is destructive. It's not helpful. It's painful and causes hurt to others. And so we want to care about that so deeply that we worry more about our character than we do about our competencies. We believe that God wants to leave his mark in us and on us so that we can leave a good mark in the world. That our character would be the driving force behind what we make. We believe deeply that God has chosen to extend himself in the world through us. That we are the tool that God has chosen to do his best work in the world. That God has entrusted each of us to be stewards over our gifts and our talents and our intellect and our passions and our abilities, and everything we have can be used for good, can be used to make the world better, to create a better future. But it's up to us to determine how and through what lens that we will create those things. Because our talent isn't going to be enough. Our passions aren't going to be enough. Our competencies and our intellect, it won't be enough. It must be fueled by a heart that has been changed and transformed and shaped by the living presence of God. See, we were the tools. You are the tool. I am the tool that God has chosen to extend himself to create the world that he imagined. We're the instruments that he has chosen. Listen to what Philippians 2 verse 13 says. It says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. It is through you and I that he wants to do his best work in the world. And I think one of the first questions we must ask ourselves is, what dreams has God placed in me? What dreams has God placed in me? Because the imagination is one of the greatest gifts that God has given us. The imagination is kind of the birthplace of how we can begin to be used by God. And it's in our imaginations that God can give us dreams and hopes and give us clarity into how we should spend our time and our energy in our lives. And so I wonder for you this morning, what dreams has God placed in you? And I believe the more that you allow God to inform you, the more he will form what flows out of you. The more we allow God to inform us, the more he will form what flows out of us. And so if it's true that what we make with our lives is guided by who we are on the inside, then I think that we must take a look at Proverbs 4:23. And that's what I want to spend the rest of our time on this morning, is how can we care for our souls? How can we make sure that the material from which we are making, which we are creating, is from a good and godly place? Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So you can see that the scriptures tell us that what we make with our lives, it flows from within. And that if we are going to have any say over what comes out of us, that we must guard our hearts and protect what we allow into us. And that's what I want to talk about today. See, what we believe is that what informs you eventually forms you. What informs you eventually forms you. And our original design is that we should live in the presence of God. That we should allow God to be the very source of life. And that if we get proximate to him, if we get close to him, and we allow him to shape who we are, then that would be the optimal place to live from. So how can we be the type of people who guard our hearts and protect what comes inside of us? This same passage goes on to say this in verse 24. It says, "Keep your mouth free from perversity. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, to be steadfast in all your ways, and do not turn to the right or to the left, and keep your foot from evil." This is great advice. This is great specific things that we can do to guard our hearts. But first, I want to take a deeper look at why is it important to guard our hearts. Listen to what Luke 6:45 says. It says, "A good man out of good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks." I love that Jesus uses this word treasure, because treasure is something that is put on deposit. It's something that you have cherished and grabbed a hold of and deposited. As with any bank, what you put on deposit in your heart will eventually be drawn out, and it will be spent in our daily living. And so we got to be careful with what we grab a hold of and what we put on deposit, what we hold close and value and treasure. Mark 7 verse 20 says this, "What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All of these evils come from inside and defile a person." See, it's saying that our heart is the epicenter of our will. And that all of these things, adultery and greed and sexual immorality, that they don't happen out here. They aren't something that happens on the exterior of us, but they actually flow from what's inside of us. They can only flow out of us because they've been put on deposit inside of us. So if it's true that it's what's in our hearts that controls our actions, then how do we control what gets in? I want to talk about 4 things this morning as words of wisdom, as tips from the scriptures that can help us with this. The first one is to gain mastery over your thought life. Now, I know this sounds counterintuitive, like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about the heart, not the mind. But what the scriptures point to us is that they are intimately connected. Listen to what Proverbs 23 says. It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. See, what you think is what you are. I have a pretty good bet that if you could tell me how you think, I could make a pretty good guess at how you live. If you tell me how you think, I can make a pretty good guess at how you live, because the scriptures say that as we think is how we are. I love this saying from an unknown source, but I've repeated it many times in my own life, and I'm trying to teach this to my children. It says this. It says, watch your thoughts because they become your words. Watch your words because they become your actions. Watch your actions because they become your habits. Watch your habits because they become your character. And watch your character because it becomes your destiny. See, these things have a compounding effect on each other. And the first step that we can take to guard our hearts is to gain mastery over our thought life. Listen to what Romans 12:2 says. It says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. See, even the scriptures say that our minds need to be renewed, and that we can renew our minds by knowing what God's good and perfect will is, by being close to him, by understanding what the scriptures say. And we do this also by resisting being conformed to the patterns of the world. There's so many things competing for our interests, competing for our time, competing for our energy, and we should not be conformed to those patterns, but instead be committed to the renewing of our minds. And when we can gain mastery over our thought lives, there's 3 things that I think will help us along this way. We will then begin to be able to govern our speech, to guard our eyes and our ears, and to guide our steps. So let's talk about what it means to govern our speech. Here at Maker's Church, we say this all the time, that words create worlds. In fact, we point all the way back to the origination, to the creation account, and it says that God spoke the world into existence, that there's power in our words, that the very voice and breath of God is what created the world, and we are made in his image and likeness. And so our words, they carry weight. They create worlds, and they create environments where people can be built up or torn down. And so we need to govern our speech. Proverbs 4:24, it says, keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. We all know this saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I think that's pretty good advice. But just today, I was doing my homework with my daughter Kira. She's 6 years old, and one of her assignments was to watch a video from Kid President, and I think that was like the best school assignment ever. If you don't know who Kid President is, look him up. He's absolutely amazing. And he was just given like a rundown of like 10 ways to be kind, and he comes to this one. If you can't think of anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And then he says, but actually it's not that at all. I think if you can't think anything nice to say, then you're not thinking hard enough. And I thought, what a thought. I mean, if we truly can't think of anything nice to say, then Kid President is right. We aren't thinking hard enough, or we aren't thinking about the right things. So So how can we then tell? How can we know what our hearts are full of? Matthew 12:34 says this. It says, "You brood of vipers," Jesus says this, "how can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him." And I wonder this morning, what are you storing up in you? What are you storing up inside of you? I remember a few years ago, I was studying for the captain's test at work, and I work as a firefighter, and this was a season of my life where I was trying to promote to the next level to become a captain, and I was in the books, and I was studying so much, and I was reading all of our manuals and policies and guidelines, and it was amazing to me as I became immersed in that, how I was so easily aware of all of the things that we were doing every day that was against policy. Now, it wasn't safe or illegal, but we were just, at any given moment, any one of us on the crew is breaking some sort of policy. And it was overwhelming to be aware of it. And the only reason I was aware of it is because I was so immersed in studying that stuff. I was obsessing over it. I was meditating on it. And I was spending time in that policy and guidelines, and it kept coming out of me. I kept pointing out, like, oh, hey, you're breaking a rule. Hey, I just did something that we're not supposed to do, because I was so aware of it. If you want to know what you're spending your time on, what you're allowing in, I think one of the scariest and hardest things to do, the greatest self-assessment you can do, is to open up your phone and look at your screen time. It is the single best indicator of what you are allowing into your soul. Take a look at it. Open it up and take a look. And let yourself know if you're okay with that. The hours that you're spending on this or on that. And this is what we are allowing into us all the time. So how can we control what our mouths are saying? It says the gate to our heart is your eyes and your ears. The gate to our heart is your eyes and your ears. And therefore we say guard your heart. Is to control what you allow to pass through those entryways. And so this is what it means then. Not only do we have to gain mastery over our thought lives, and not only do we need to govern our speech, but we have to guard our eyes and our ears. Listen to what Proverbs 4:25 says. It says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you." And there are so many things that we look at and that we listen to. And I think what we need to start with is we just need to watch what we watch. We need to watch what we watch. And there are things that you can't control. There are some things that you have seen in your life that you shouldn't have seen, that you didn't have any control over. But there are so many things that we do have control over, about what we let into our eyes. I don't have to spell it out. I think you know right now, even as I talk about this, that there are probably some unhealthy or unwholesome things that we just see too often that we can have control over. Now, there are other things, like I said, that you don't have control over. And even though you can't control seeing that, you can control whether or not you put it on deposit, whether you grab a hold of it and treasure it. And these are the things that begin to make the biggest impact on who we become. Proverbs 4:20 says this. It talks about how we should control what we hear. It says, "My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body." I remember when I was new to my faith as a teenager, and there was this craze going on. I don't know if it was a healthy thing or not, but there was this whole movement where Christian youth were encouraged to get rid of their secular music. And I remember I just loved music so much, and I had hundreds of CDs that I had spent a lot of money on, and I loved music, I played music. But I remember at this juncture for me, I took all of those CDs and we had a big bonfire with my friends, and we burned all of our secular music. And at that point in my life, that was one of the ways that I was controlling what I was allowing into my ears. And I don't think that that's necessarily right for everyone or for at every moment in our life, but at that time, it was really helpful to me. And as I've matured in my faith and as I've grown to be an adult, I mean, that music is a lot of it I've come back to. I'm grateful for Spotify, even though my CDs are all gone, and I can listen to it in a different way and share some of that with my kids. And it's not about whether it's good or evil. It's about how is it impacting what I'm allowing into my heart. And at that time, that was an important move for me. And I wonder if there's things that you're listening to, whether it's podcasts or news sources or Twitter feeds or whatever it might be, that just simply aren't healthy for you. And you need to cut it off. And if God's speaking to you right now and He's giving you examples or ideas of what that might mean for you, then I would encourage you to do it. There's so much about what we're listening to that matters, but I think more important than anything, it matters who we're listening to. Of course, we want to be hearing from God, but I think there's other wise counsel in our life that we need to have a gut check on and know who our source is to get wisdom and advice from. I love in the beginning of the creation account when Adam and Eve had first sinned and they were hiding in their shame. And God asked them, who told you that? And I think that we need to ask ourselves that question all the time when we begin believing the lies, when we begin believing the things that are just untrue. We need to ask ourselves over and over again, who told you that? Now, we also need to guard our hearts by what we allow to be put on deposit there. And listen to what Philippians 4:8 says. It says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever is noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are good report. If there is any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. This is what the scriptures say that we should put on deposit. All of those things, noble, just, pure, lovely, good report, virtuous, praiseworthy. Those are the things that we should put on deposit and hold close to us. And when we do, that is what will flow out of us. Now, the last thing that we can do to help us in this endeavor is to guide our steps. Guide your steps. Proverbs 4:26 says, give careful thought to the paths for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil. And I wonder this morning, what paths are you walking down? What paths are you walking down? And more important than that, who are you walking with? Who's alongside of you? Are you in good company? Now, I know that a lot of this might not be new to you. This is like stuff that you probably know. This is stuff that you might even chalk up to be common sense. But the problem with us is that we can know the right thing to do, but we fail to do it. See, there's both the hardware and the software of our hearts. We know how to take care of the hardware. We know that for our heart muscle to work well and to stay healthy, that we need to exercise, we need to do cardio, we need to eat well, we need to keep our cholesterol low. We know that we need to do those things. But how hard is it to do that? It's so hard to do that. And the same is true for the software of our heart. For the things that really become the guiding essence, the foundation and base from which we begin to make and create and innovate and be generative from, those things are even harder to care for. All the things that we've talked about this morning. And I think that perhaps one of the greatest protections for our hearts, one of the things that can help us do all of those things best, perhaps one of the most important things that we can do with our hearts, is to believe with them. Listen to what Romans 10:9 says. It says, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. And I wonder for us this morning if that is step one for us. Whether you have been around Jesus or following Jesus or at church for a long time, or whether this is all entirely new to you, I believe that one of the most important things we can do today is to believe with our hearts. That we would believe that God raised Jesus from the dead and that he conquered death and he wants to give us life. And I think that that is step one for us. So whether you've been around for a long time walking with Jesus or whether you knew for the first time, this is the step that I want to invite you to today. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we thank you for your scriptures. We thank you for your guidance and for the wisdom that comes, Lord. And God, we desperately want to be a people who believe that we are made to make. God, we want to make a difference in this world with our lives. God, we want to leave a mark on the environments that we have been entrusted with. We want to take our gifts and our talents and our passions and use them for good. But God, we know that everything that comes out of us is guided by what we've allowed into us. And so God, we pray, Lord, that you would help us to guard our hearts. And Lord, I believe that what we need to do first is we need to believe with our hearts. And so Jesus, I just pray that you'd help us with our unbelief if we're having a challenge with that. And God, that even for those of us who've been walking with you for a long time, that today that our hearts, that our faith would just believe deeply in the gospel, deeply in the good news. God, that you've come for us, to rescue us, to give us life in the full. And God, I pray if there's anyone watching this morning that has never placed their faith in you, Jesus, that they would do that right now, that you would move in their heart, God, and that they would place their faith in you, that they would believe with their hearts and say, Jesus, I trust you. And so God, I just pray that your Holy Spirit would move mightily in us now. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. If you're new with us today and you've never followed Jesus before with your life, and you just felt this shift in your spirit and your heart is longing to believe in Jesus, we would love to journey with you. And so whether you've placed your faith in him this morning for the first time or you just want to know more about what that means, the best thing for you to do is pull out your phone and text the word new follower to the number 97000. And we will reach out to you and we will walk alongside of you. And that would be the greatest privilege to us. Thank you all so much for tuning in this morning. I pray that this week would be a time where you would learn what it means to guard your heart and then begin to believe that you are made to make. What gifts, what talents, what passions, what dreams has God put inside of you? Go and make something with that this week. God bless.
For those of you wondering, this is what my students actually see when we are doing distance learning. And you can't see the chaos, but that doesn't mean that it is not there, right? So next week, join us for that week of prayer and fasting where we are going to quiet our hearts, take a moment to step outside of the chaos and just seek the face of God. I want to thank Pastor Derrick so much for an incredible message, for doing double duty. Not only did he record this message for all of us so that we could watch it together, but he's also preaching live at the park today at Morley Field. If you want to attend our next live gathering, it's going to be December 6th, that first Sunday in December. Make sure that you follow us to check out all the details and to register. And right now we're gonna go to our live Zoom for a time of communion. So grab your elements and I will see you there. Bye.